Just now I thought Mistborn March sure sounded a lot cooler than Mistborn June, right? I mean, it sounds a lot more fun. But hey, speaking of fun, let's talk about the alloy of law. The mark of a great man is one who knows when to set aside the important things in order to accomplish the vital ones. Once one becomes a man, he can and must make his own decisions. But I do offer warning. Even a good thing can become destructive if taken to excess. The measure of a person is not how much they have lived, it's in how they make use of what life has shown them. People today, it seems they are good or sometimes evil, mostly by inertia, not by choice. Act like you were important, act like you were angry and people just want to get out of your way. To be of use in even a single burst of flame and sound is worth more than a lifetime of achieving nothing. Some mistakes, though, well, you can't fix them by being sorry. You can't fix them no matter what you do. If you remove the foundation of trust from a relationship, then what is the point of that relationship? It's funny how quickly someone can stop calling you a miscreant or rogue when they want your help. Hey, what's up, bookworms and Lord Ruler Brandon Sanderson fans? Mike back to the Cosmere to talk a little Mistborn Era 2, and more specifically, The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. Now, guys, this is the fourth book set in the Mistborn world of Scadrial. Now, it was published in 2011, and I didn't read it when it first came out. And I'll tell you briefly why. I loved the original Mistborn trilogy. I felt like it had a proper ending, and when I heard that it didn't have those characters or anything even set within that time frame, I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and pass. But now that time has gone by and I'm doing the Cosmere 2020, I said, okay, now is the perfect time to get into this, even though they're not all out yet, and that's something that I was very much against. But you know, you make a plan, you need to stick to it, right? And I'm just going to say that I'm very, very excited that I started, because I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. I really, really like this book, and we're going to talk about why. But I do want to let you know, guys, unlike Mistborn Era 1, no spoilers on this video. They will have spoilers at the very, very end, and I will give you plenty of warning before I get there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what it's about, what makes it good or bad, and why you should read it before I get into the spoiler section. All right, so let's kick it off by talking about what is the book about. This takes place 341 years after the events in the Hero of Ages, and we follow Waxilium Ladrian. Now, if the name Ladrian sounds familiar to you Era 1 readers, that's because it is the house name of a character in that series named Breeze. That's all I'll say in there. So I won't tell you anything more than that. But speaking of the original trilogy there, I will not be speaking plainly of that in case you haven't read it yet. Let me put this down before I hit somebody with it. And I might make some references to a couple things, but nothing that's going to spoil the original Mistborn trilogy. I don't really know why you'd be watching this if you haven't read the original Mistborn trilogy, but I'm glad that you are, because I love talking to you guys about these things. So I won't be spoiling anything from the original trilogy that I think is something that's just going to ruin it for you. I might mention a couple names or something like that. Just wanted to get that out there. But speaking of this original trilogy, they do speak of a harmony. They do speak of Lord Mistborn. They do speak of the Ascendant Warrior, Iron Eyes, the Last Emperor, and the Originators, all through this book. So if you haven't read the original trilogy, I think you'll be fine. But I think if you have, you'll pick up on these little things, and it's more than just, I think it's actually a little more than just a quick nod, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But it's not necessary to know those references. But like I said, if you've read those, you're gonna enjoy it a little bit more. But back to Waxilium, who I'm going to refer to as Wax for the rest of these reviews, because that's what everybody in the characters, or all the other characters in the story, refer to him as Wax. So that's good enough for me. But he has sort of avoided this life of nobility because I guess he figures it's too boring. He doesn't want to be stuck behind a desk. He wants to be out there, enforcing the law in his own way. And he's working as a lawman out on the roughs, which I guess you could say is like the bad side of town, or like the uncivilized, the frontier, the wild, wild west, as it will. But he has a personal tragedy, and that combined with the head of his household, his uncle, passing away, he decides it's time to hang up the 6 shooters and fulfill his role as the Lord of House Ladrian. And it's not long before his old partner Wayne shows up, and he's thrust back into a life of gunslinging and allomancy, and he tries to solve a case of robberies and some outlaws taking nobles hostage. So we got your detective story, you got your flat-out allomancy and all that things, and you just got a really kind of a gunslinger story, which I'll talk about in what makes it good or bad. Is one of the things that I don't really care for is westerns. I love to watch westerns, but I've never been a fan of reading them, because I feel like you can only tell me about that tumbleweed so many times before I'm like, I get it. I know what they're at. I know where they are. I know how this land looks. Okay, but what makes it good or bad? I'm going to say the dialogue is the first thing I'm going to come up with. And while the original trilogy was amazing, it did kind of feel self-serious sometimes, and it was very bleak and for most of it. And I felt like those characters weren't really having fun very often. I felt like even when things calmed down, they still were carrying a lot of worries, a lot of burdens. It was a lot of stress. I'm like, guys, calm down. You're young. You're going to lose your hair before you're in your 20s, right? But this one, I feel like it's the exact opposite here. Wayne is easily one of my favorite characters in the Cosmere. And if it feels like, okay, this is a pretty short book by Brandon Sanderson standards, like it's 300 pages. And yeah, I've heard that it's because it started as a short story. He never knew that he was going to actually... He says that he never knew he was going to be writing a new era of Mistborn. But once he got along going, he felt like he had enough for a story. So there's probably more to that story. I haven't looked it up. I don't look up any of this stuff because I don't want spoiled. But anyhow, I felt like the banter between Wax and Wayne is next level. And something you've heard me guys say a lot on this channel, if you've been following my Dresden Files reviews, I'm big time Joss Whedon fan. I love Buffy, I love Angel, but I also love a little thing called Firefly. And that's what the banter in this really made me think of. So much so that I imagine Wax and Wayne as Captain Mal and Wash now. Was it Nathan Fillion and Alan Tudyk? That's how I imagine Wax and Wayne now, because of the way they talk to each other. It really made me think of Firefly. And I said I don't like reading westerns, but I'm fine with movie or TV series based on this. And the thing that kept coming back to me during this was Firefly. It felt like Firefly, but you're replacing spaceships with allomancy. So if that's as much of a sales job as you really need there, I mean, if somebody had sold it to me as like that, I probably would have read this a lot earlier, because it's not just your straight up Western. It's not just your straight up steampunk. It really feels like a mashup of a few things, and it's done that way that I feel like only Lord Ruler Sanderson can do. But about the allomancy, I think that some really good stuff is there are new allomantic powers. Now, I'm not going to get into particulars because I feel like that can get kind of spoilery, but just know that Sanderson is not sitting on his laurels here with this investiture. He really is continuing to build these abilities, and this is my favorite magic system that Brandon Sanderson has in all of his universe. So that was very welcome, very, very welcome to me. So he continues to evolve his magic system, and it's now bullet powered. So very cool stuff. It has a really, really compelling villain, which sometimes I feel can be hit or miss in Brandon Sanderson books. I'm gonna be honest. I feel like his villains are mostly really good, but usually it's his good guys are the best parts of the story for me. I love a lot of the ones in Stormlight, which I'll talk about when I talk about Stormlight. But there was a few things in Mistborn that I was kind of like, Era 1, where I was like, whatever. I really like the villain in this one, Miles. I want to know more about him, but sometimes that's what makes a villain cool, is not knowing much about him. But I mean, this guy is OP as hell, and it is a really, really cool way that their confrontations take place. Let's leave it at that. But I liked him very, very much. And like I said, knowing less about him just kind of makes it even better, especially when you see how he got from where he was, or when Wax talks about how he was and how he is in the story. And it's like I said, God, I felt like I could have used a short story about that. So very good villain. And as with all things Sanderson, it's about the characters, man. The trio of Wax, Wayne, and Marcy is the most Han, Luke, and Leia I've gotten out of any characters in the Cosmere. Maybe Adolin, Kaladin, and Shallan, but no, these three, awesome. I want these three to just be the central focus of all these books, and I hope that they are, because I like them quite a bit. It's a fun little combo there, and that brings us over to why you should read it. And if you haven't read Era 1, I wouldn't read this, because I think you could understand the story without reading it, but there's some huge surprises in this book that you'll get them, but they'll land much better if you've read Era 1, and I'll talk about those in spoilers. So if you know those characters and this history of this land, there's some moments that are going to make you be like, oh, because for a while I was like, wow, he really is just like, basically all these things are like a myth. He's not tying it in with Era 1 at all. It ties in. I'll leave it there. If you enjoyed the Mistborn world, but I think you'll be okay. But don't go into this expecting a straight continuation. That's going to help you a lot. Time has passed. The world's changing. Instead of swords and shields now, we've got guns and industry. It's just the natural course of order. So if you go into it knowing that, I think that'll help quite a bit. You're not going to have, Vin and Eland and all these, and Kelsey and all these people. You're not going to have that. So if you're okay with that and you just understand, basically, it's a new story, but with Allomancy, I think you're going to have a good time, just like I did. I said that this is my favorite magic system, and adding to that mythos is just everything for me. So come for the magic, stay for the gunplay, because I think it really adds a new level to, as you know, all things being metal, when it comes to Allomancy, can make gunplay quite fun. You ever see The Matrix? Yeah. And why you should read this is for Wayne. I'm not going to lie. Wayne stole this book completely for me. He's the fun character I felt like we never had in Era 1. Yes, I liked Breeze. I thought Breeze was good for a little levity, but he was still mostly serious, and there was a lot of doom and gloom. Oh, we're all going to die, with Breeze. With this one, when it's nut cutting time, he's serious, and he can hold his own. He's a badass, don't get me wrong. But he's not just the goofball, but I mean, there's so many little things like he does about his hat. So many gags that are just so good that, I mean, I actually found myself laughing out loud like this was a Dresden Files book. And it feels like the most fun that Sanderson has had writing a story, at least that I've read so far. I haven't read much of his non-Cosmere. I haven't read any of his non-Cosmere stuff. So he might do it a little more in that. But as far as what I've read, this is the first time I feel like he is just having a great time and just laughing behind his typewriter. You think he still writes with a typewriter? I don't know. I think he's like the Tommyknockers, and he just goes to sleep and it just writes whatever he's thinking. That's because it's the only way you can write this fast, right? But one more thing is there is no forced romance. I know one of the biggest criticisms that I heard about Era 1 when I did that Why You Should Read Mistborn, one of the biggest criticisms I got was the teeny love stories, I think they called it. The teen angst, the teeny love story. There might be setting up romance, there's attraction and stuff like that, but there's nothing forced. There is no, these characters are together just because I want them to be together kind of thing here. So if that's something that you felt like you didn't really care for in Era 1, I think you're going to be fine here. Also, the politics, very minuscule in this one. So if you weren't on the heavy politics, again, they're here. They're trying to do things like arranged marriages and things like that. But again, this is a very quick story. And it really is very lean. There's no real fat in this one at all. So if you wanted a little bit more fast-paced than the first Mistborn, I think you're going to have a great time like you did. And I mean, for me, final thoughts on this book is just the characters, the witty dialogue, the overall sense of fun, while still having, your definite good guys versus your bad guys, and you're having stakes, and our characters aren't invincible. They are in danger. I feel like it just made this one a great time. And I did not expect that. I did not expect to like this nearly as much as I did, and I just had such a good time with it. And I can't wait to keep going. So there it is for non-spoilers, guys. I'm going to go ahead and kick this over to spoilers, but first I got a cough. Aren't you glad I didn't make you listen to that? I said I'll never do jump cuts on this channel unless I've got a cough. Then I'm going to do it, or my kids are banging on the door. Anyhow, so spoilers, guys. The whole concept of being a twin-born, very, very cool. This is someone who has at least one allomantic power and one ferrochemical power. And this is something that did not have. I had to go back and make sure, because I was like, was this something that was possible in the original trilogy? No, it's something that was not possible until after the final ascension at the end of Era 1 there with the two shards. So like I said, I loved it because it keeps expanding this investiture that I love so much. I think it's really, really cool. Another thing is I didn't expect Lessie to die in the prologue. The way that it was set up, I just thought, this is just going to be our duo for this book, and I saw the two guys in the front. I figured, okay, it's going to be like a buddy cop Western kind of story, but you're going to have your female lead and your male lead. So I thought Lessie was going to be the female lead. Had no idea. And the fact that it's Wax is the one who accidentally shoots her, wow, dark, and it was wild, but it also gave Wax that character arc that I think he needs through this book. So it was welcome. It was just a little surprising to me. Wayne being Twinborn 2 was awesome because I like the way that he can set these combos up to where it's unique powers. And he's a fairing and a misting, and this lets him. What does Sanderson call it? I think he calls it a slider. It's someone who lets them use like a speed bubble. So if you're inside this bubble, everything else is moving fast around you. But you can basically, it's a way you can have slow down time and have like a private conversation with everybody. You don't make any like sudden movements. They can't even tell that any time has gone by. Really neat idea. And it was something that I thought, okay, that sounds like something that could be a Deus Ex Machina in the future, and it still might. But right now I love it. I am loving it. And especially since Mercy basically had like the opposite. So very cool idea. And in fact, Mercy being Twinborn 2 was very, very cool. So it's one of those things that I felt like is a new twist, but it was she Mistborn? Was she Twinborn? Not Mistborn. There are no more Mistborns, right? Right? All right. This is what happens when you try to read 3 series at one time, guys. But Edward Ladrian. Now, I suspected that this cat was still alive. However, I didn't suspect that he was actually Mr. Suit. So I like that Sanderson doesn't, have him arrested or killed in this first book. So he's got hopefully an overarching villain, because I like, obviously, when you were going against your family members, it's obviously going to be. I mean, that's what fantasy is all about, right? So I can see the power struggle there. I like the way they kind of had their little head off there at the end. And he's like, man, it's going to be my word against yours, and who's going to believe you? And I'm like, well, dude, you already faked your death. I don't think anybody's going to be believing you. But we'll see. We'll see. And you find out that Wax's sister is still alive too, so I'm sure that's going to come into play somewhere. So lots of open little hooks here at the end, where I was glad, because a lot of people told me, oh, this one feels like a standalone, and I'm like, I don't think so. I think there's plenty of hooks here at the end where I can't wait to pick up the next one. But there is one part in this I have a couple questions about, and if it's something that's going to ruin it for me, please don't answer. Just let it be rhetorical. I don't know if Wax actually spoke to Sazed or Harmony there during that one gunfight, or if he was just delusional from all the wounds that he had taken. So that was something. And also, at the very, very end, Mercy is confronted by a Steel Inquisitor, and he mentions Breeze by name, and I'm thinking, is this Marsh? And the thing was, I was like, I don't know. When you get turned to a Steel Inquisitor, do you like live forever? Did I miss that in the original trilogy? But then I thought, or is he just doing the thing where he's storing up the Adium like the Lord Ruler did? So if this is actually Marsh, which I'm thinking that it is, very, very cool. And that's why I said, if you haven't read Era 1, that's something that would be kind of lost on you. So these are when I'm like, okay, he is tying it in. Because I went through most of the thing just being like, like when he gets the rifle, it's called Vindication for the Ascendant Warrior Vin, stuff like that. I thought it was just going to be little things like that, or mentioning the religion that's based off Kelsier and things like that. So it seems like now we're actually getting hard tie-ins to the original. That's cool. I'm here for that. I am definitely here for that. But yeah, plenty of mysteries going into the next book, which I can't wait to get to. And that is going to be in July. Cosmere 2020 continues in July. I'm going to be talking about Shadows of Self, and then I will conclude Era 2 that's available right now in August with what Bands of Mourning, and I'm also going to wrap Secret History into there as well, because everybody tells me the Secret History spoils things from Era 2, which I was like, that's interesting. So if it's a Kelsier story, how is it spoiling things in Era 2? So we'll see. I'm very excited about that. But yeah, after I finish that, I'll be waiting for Era 2, or the fourth book of Era 2, just like you schmucks. So at this point, I was like, well, I'm going to wait for it to finish up. But, duty calls. I wanted to do this Cosmere thing. I wanted to make a schedule and stick to it. So that's why I was like, okay, this is finally going to happen. I've been looking for an excuse to read Era 2 anyway. A good friend of mine, the one who actually got me into Sanderson, has always sworn by this series, and he knew that I would love that I would love Wayne. He knew that I would love Wayne. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of predictable. But guys, have you read Alloy of Law? Did you like it? What do you think about Era 2? Drop in the comments. Let me know. Please don't spoil anything after Alloy of Law. Please don't answer my rhetorical questions if they are spoilers. I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate you guys listening, especially the ones that are actually listening this long after the spoilers. And I will talk to you in the comments.